Hi, I'm not sure how many of you are there yet, but I'm Toril. I'm a nutritional scientist and a functional medicine practitioner, and I also consult for food and health brands. Thank you so much for coming along today. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about our diet during lockdown, but also a little bit about the immune system so you can understand where I'm coming from. And then we've got plenty of time for questions and all sorts of other things. So I have got some slides to share, so I will be flicking between slides and also between the screen. So if it takes me a minute, I apologize. I'm not the most technological of people, and this is all new to me. It's super exciting to have you all here. So my brand's called The Urban Kitchen. I've been running this for over 15 years, and I originally went to medical school with a view to becoming an oncologist, and then realized after a while when my mama had breast cancer that this wasn't the journey for me. I then switched into working in research, and then I went into a master's in nutritional medicine, and been working in that field ever since, and been studying always for about functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, and how we can use our nutrition and our lifestyle to help optimize our health. So I'm going to get to my slides at the same time. Ooh. So hopefully you can see some slides at the same time. Let me see. I'm not sure if you can. Hold on a second. So this is just the beginning slide, and there's a little bit more about me. Um, and I really wanted to talk to you firstly about the immune system. There's different immune systems, incredibly complex. It protects and defends us from all sorts of different organisms and viruses and bacteria, and actually even also environmental stress too. It's made up of a network of tissues and organs, and which all work together to defend us. Pathogens can be, as we've talked about, viruses or bacteria or all sorts of other type of things. So one of the most vital bits of the immune system is differentiating between our own healthy cells and foreign cells and substances which might be attacking us. And there are two different parts of the immune system. Um, there is the innate system, which is not specific. It's almost the first line of defense. And then we have the adaptive system, which is far more specific, and it's the second line of defense. So if you're looking at this slide here, it's really basic. So I just wanted to get a slight overview of how the immune system works. So the innate system is more like a general defense system. So it'd be like having your policeman walking around and just checking what's going on. With the adaptive system, it might be maybe the specialist constables or maybe like some specialist detectives who are going in with some, maybe knowledge about drugs or something else, and they're going in and being much more specific with their attack. So with the adaptive system, it's kind of learned. Our body has to learn how to defend ourselves. So that's why for example, if you've had chicken pox, sorry, I just fell over. If you've had chicken pox before, then your body's learnt to defend you against chicken pox because you won't normally get it again. You can obviously get shingles, which is a slightly different form of the virus, but you won't get chicken pox again. So I had chicken pox last year because I've never had chicken pox before, and so my body hadn't learnt it, and so now I won't get chicken pox. If I come across another nephew or niece who has chicken pox, I will not get it, which is really exciting because chickenpox is horrible as an adult. Um, so the two systems work together in conjunction to really defend us against bacteria, viruses, pathogens, all sorts of things. I think understanding how the immune system works is just going to help us to understand how we can support it from a health and the diet and lifestyle perspective. So this is an incredibly complicated slide, but I just wanted to really show you kind of the interaction of the immune system and our gut microflora. So the gut microflora are beneficial bacteria and other organisms that live within inside our intestines and our gut. Um, these this is how our diet can make a huge difference to our immune system. It isn't directly, some of those things that we eat don't directly make a difference to our immune system, but it's because of the impacts they have on our gut microflora, our beneficial bacteria. So I've just realized I need to move this because I can't actually see my slides at the same time. There we go. So you'll see on this different slide, and I can't really point things out, but there's lots of different types of immune system cells. So those are the kind of orange round circles and the blue circles. And then you'll see that there's some little kind of wiggly things. Those are the microvilli. That's the kind of lining of our gut. And that's where we absorb all these different things. Now, there's lots of different things floating around. One of them is bacterial metabolites, which is in the middle of the slide, and it says SCFAs. So our diet can affect the immune system via the gut microflora and these beneficial bacteria in so many different ways. But one is it metabolizes our food to produce these short chain fatty acids. These short chain fatty acids are from the gut bacteria fermenting dietary fiber from vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and they're an important energy source for our gut cells, our colon cells, and they also help to regulate the immune system process with healing and reduce inflammation, and they protect us against cancer and other diseases. We also protect against pathogens. So the actual bacteria themselves, our beneficial bacteria, are kind of act as the first line of defense, as we talked about, and they stimulate the immune response to protect against pathogenic bacteria. So, for example, if we ate something that had gone off, like maybe which had E. coli in it, those first bacteria, the gut bacteria would be our first line of defense to protect us. And then we'd have the next line of defense. For example, lactobacilli, which is one of the main beneficial bacteria in our gut, which we often get from breastfeeding and from our mothers, can transform substances rich in fiber into lactic acid when there's no oxygen. And that actually acidifies our intestines and slows down the movement of pathogenic bacteria. Sorry, I'm just moving along here. Also, another aspect of the beneficial bacteria is that it can train our immune system. It trains our immune system by selectively upregulating or suppressing immune responses so we can tolerate some substances in our environment, which is really important for preventing immune disease and allergies. So, for example, if you're at the moment, I've got hay fever. So I know that, and I have actually got the window open, which I probably shouldn't do at the moment, but I know that that's part of my immune system, not necessarily my gut, but generally it's being overactivated. And that's why my nose is a little bit runny and things like that. The other thing is that these bacterial genes that we have many, many more bacteria in our gut and the rest of our body, actually, not all our microbiomes, than we have actually of our own cells. But some of these genes can also regulate kind of inflammation, whether it's local or around the body. And I think that's really important. I'm going to flick back to, there you go, technology for you. So I really want to talk a little bit more now about kind of why the diet and what we eat is really important at this time when we're highly stressed, when we're stuck at home and we maybe can't go shopping as many times as possible, we're not eating out as much, so we're cooking more at home or using foods that we've kind of half prepared. And then also I want to talk about some of the practical aspects of how we can cook really delicious food that's really nutritious and also waste less food, because I think it's really fascinating, but 30% of all the food that's produced is wasted before it even gets onto our plates. So a lot of it's because it's wasted in the kind of production process. Some of it's wasted in the supermarket process, and then the rest of it's wasted because we buy it and we don't actually eat it. This is obviously not just a waste of time and money, but it's a huge impact on the environment and particularly greenhouse gases. So I think it's a really important time to start looking at this too. So I'm just going to flick back to my slides. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is the Mediterranean diet pyramid. If you look at the bottom of this pyramid, you'll see that there's lots of people. So the Mediterranean diet really shouldn't be called the Mediterranean diet. It really is a Mediterranean lifestyle. And I think this is a really interesting thing for us to discuss at this time while we're all at home, some of us alone, some of us with our family, and we're probably not used to spending that much time with our families and our friends in the same way. But what's interesting about this Mediterranean diet is the basis of this is people sitting around a table. And I think that's really, interesting. I've just realized that I haven't shared the slides with you, so I'm just going to share that again. Sorry, here we go. So you'll see at the bottom of this slide, you can see there's people dancing, there are people walking, exercising, but more importantly, the bottom thing is the people sitting around a table and eating together. So I think we need to also remember that's part of the lifestyle. You'll see in the next tier of the Mediterranean kind of diet pyramid, as it's called, there's a vast array of different colored fruits and vegetables. You also see very clearly there is quite a lot of whole grains, there's some olive oil, there's garlic, and there's nuts and seeds. And really, our diets for not just our immune system, but just for overall health should be based that most of our foods are on this plant-based foods, so vegetables, fruits, nuts, seed, and whole grains that help support our overall health. The next level is fish and seafood. We know that fish and seafood is not just high in protein, but has lots of beneficial components, one of which is oily fish, such as salmon and mackerel and herring and things like that, have something called fatty acids, which are really important, DHA and EPA, which are not just important for brain health, but they're also important for inflammation, and they also affect our immune system. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Beans and legumes, which I just kind of come back to, that's a massive part of the kind of vegetable based, the plant based diet part. The next thing is herbs and spices. Um, Again, you'll notice that a lot of food in different cultures, whether it's Spain and Italy or Thailand or India, uses quite a lot of herbs and spices. And that's incredibly important because it has lots of bioactive compounds which can help support our health in a myriad of ways. At the very top of this pyramid, we have poultry, eggs, cheese, and yogurt. And then we have above that meats and sweets. Um, so it's about basing our foods and having some of those items, but maybe having less of them. I'm not sure about whether the eggs should be in that same in that tier or with the fish, but I think it really is dependent on how you like to eat. You will notice it does say drink water and drink wine. If we look at information and data from the blue zones are these areas in the world where people live are more likely to live up to 100 and over 100. And there's 5 areas in the world. One is Sardinia, and next is Ikaria in Greece. There is Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. There's Linda Loma in California, which is a Seventh-day Adventist group. And there's also Okinawa, an island in Japan. And in all these areas, they kind of have a lot of these principles of having this Mediterranean lifestyle where people eat together, they support each other, they exercise together, they kind of have a purpose for life. They have a more plant-based diet. That doesn't mean they're vegetarian. They do a lot of these people eat fish, apart from the Seventh Day Adventists in California, who are vegetarian. But I think it's just about looking how we eat rather than basing our meals on meat. Maybe having some good quality meat as part of the meal, as opposed to being the main proponent. So I'm still playing with how do you switch slides. It's very exciting for me, technology. So the next thing I want to do is really kind of talk about what we can eat to support our immune system health. And I'm really doing a quick overview of this because we only have a little bit of time, and I really want to spend as much time as possible answering your questions and helping you with the practical aspects of what to do whilst we are in lockdown, because we don't actually know how long this is going to last. It was initially for 3 weeks in London, in the UK, but now we're coming up to the end of that 3 weeks after Easter weekend. I don't think it's likely that we're going to be coming out of it anytime soon. And when I say soon, I mean in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So I think it's something we need to now adapt to our new normal and look at how we can make the most of this situation and how we can eat best in this situation. So I want to talk now about what we can actually eat to support our immune system and why I don't talk about immune boosting. So immune boosting, there's lots and lots and lots of articles about this, but we don't really want to boost our immune systems as such because that means it's overacting and we don't want it to do. The immune system is really highly controlled. It's very highly complex. And as I talked earlier, we want it to differentiate between ourselves and other foreign matter and cells and bacteria which are attacking us. And if it becomes too sensitive, it'll be attacking us all the time. And that's how we get autoimmune disease. And we really don't want that because that would be another thing to deal with at a very stressful time. But what we do want to do is eat in a way that optimizes our immune system and our overall health so we can be our very best and our immune system can work in the best way possible. I'm not going to really talk about other lifestyle aspects today, but sleep is a massive component in our immune system. I have written about this elsewhere, and I will write about this more and talk about this more another day. But just this is a really good opportunity while we're not commuting, while we are mostly at home, to try and really look at our sleep and have better sleep, quality sleep. I think the thing that I'm finding quite hard is that I'm having way more screen time than I've ever had before, and that is disrupting my sleep. When you have more screen time, there's more blue light, and that affects your melatonin production, which is your sleep hormone. So that's something just to be wary of. Anyway, what we're going to talk about really is our diet. So I'm just going to flick back to the screens now, the slides even. Right, here we go. Sharing the slides. So what should we actually eat then to support our immune system? So there's lots of different things I can say, but I've kind of come up with a few just sort of points for you to take away and to support you. So my first point, which I actually use for every single talk that I ever give about any type of nutrition and health, is eat the rainbow. Eating a wide range of colors of different plant foods will support your immune system. There's lots and lots of different reasons for this. Each colored food has different antioxidants, and these antioxidants are really important to protect the structural elements of our immune system and also the gut itself. It does that by protecting against free radical damage, which is where different oxidating molecules can break things down. It maintains the sort of structural integrity of membranes, protects against DNA damage, and also supports those healthy, beneficial gut bacteria. In addition to that, all of these antioxidants can help us in so many other ways, not just with our immune system, but heart health, and also protecting against cancer. I do a lot of work within the cancer field and with diabetes, and this is the same advice I give everyone. Let's try and eat the rainbow, eat a wide range of colorful plant foods. So you'll see this is a salad example. It's on, and the recipe is on my website, but it's a roasted pumpkin, chickpea, and fennel salad with pomegranate seeds. And actually, I did not make this in my own kitchen. I actually made this while I was traveling around in Australia. So this showed I didn't have my full kitchen of equipment. I just had some fresh fruits and vegetables and some olive oil, and that's kind of what I came up with. So have a look at my website. This also covers the next point, which is eat a fiber-rich diet. So when we talk about fiber, there's two different types of fiber: soluble and insoluble fiber. We need all of these different types of fiber. Every fruit and vegetable and whole grains and other things have different types of fiber. We need both types of fiber to have beneficial gut bacteria and then also to support our immune system. Chickpeas, nuts, seeds, and herbs also have fiber. Um, Eating fiber-rich diet can also help us to protect by stopping our immune system from becoming hypersensitive and also helping us to regulate our immune system. And this can also, it might be potentially because it reduces the kind of inflammation within our body. One thing that's quite interesting, I think, is that in the UK, we do not eat enough fiber. The UK government suggests that we eat at least 30 grams a day. Most people, I mean, well, the average amount eaten is 18 grams. So it's not most people, because some people eat a lot more. But this is where we can really look at the Mediterranean diet for helping us to eat more fiber. So that would be whole grains. So I'll talk about more, examples of whole grains and how you can add them to diet in a second. But we're looking at, more fruits and vegetables, lentils, beans, all those kind of things. Will it change your diet, your sort of toilet habits? Yes. You want to do this slowly because your body needs to get used to it. When you start eating more plant-based foods and more fiber-filled food, it takes a while for your gut to adjust, and you might feel a bit more bloated. You might have a little few more stomach cramps, but this is just normal. You will get used to it, and your body will get used to it once you start eating that more fiber every day. Eating oily fish and seafood, and particularly good fats. And I've kind of just rolled those up together just to make it really simple. But oily fish like salmon, trout, herring, mackerel, all those kind of good things are high in DHA, which is a really important essential fatty acid, which we require not just for inflammation, because it helps to reduce inflammation. It's also incredibly important for our brain health. But with now recent research has shown that this DHA also enhances some of our immune cells particularly B cell activity, and also with antibody production. This B cell activity antibody production is the second line of defense. This is the second part, the adaptive part of the immune system. So it's particularly good for this learnt behavior. So we don't know yet if coronavirus is something that we can catch again. I mean, as in COVID-19, we know that flus and colds are also coronaviruses, and they change their coat quite regularly. So that means that we have to have new viruses all the time. We don't know how COVID-19 actually behaves yet, because we don't know enough about it. So, but what's interesting is if you come across other bacteria or viruses or other pathogens, if your body recognizes them, it can have a better response when you've been eating a diet that's higher in these DHA and oily fish and things like that. Good fats. So good fats, part of the Mediterranean diet is extra virgin olive oil, and they use it everywhere. I cook with olive oil, not extra virgin, but just normal olive oil, because I prefer it. I know other people use different things, but there's also a good balance of omega-3 to omega-6 fats, and that's not something we're going to talk about today, but just it is better for your health generally. But nuts and seeds also contain some really good fats, monounsaturated fats, which are useful for the integrity of our membranes and different cells in our body. Eating sources of protein. So one of the things that we need, we're a little bit more sedentary now than we probably normally are. To maintain muscle mass, we do need to make sure we eat sorts of protein, whether those are animal-based or plant-based. It doesn't matter which, but you do need to make sure that at every meal, you're trying to aim for 20 grams of protein. But in particular, we really want to eat, for our immune system, sources of protein which are high in zinc. So meat and dairy and offal and liver and oysters and a lot of seafood is high in zinc. And so that's a really important food for our immune system. I think that it's something that we're often quite deficient in. So I often recommend that people supplement with it if they don't eat those kind of foods. I particularly love things like crab, and they're also high in zinc. If you like oysters, you're in luck because they're really high in zinc. I know it's a little bit harder to get them right now though. I want to talk about other things for us to take. Vitamin D, that's something that's become really interesting, particularly when we're discussing COVID-19 in the UK. The government has always advised us, particularly in the winter months from October to April, to take at least 10 micrograms of vitamin D, which is 400 international units a day. That supports our bone health um, and our muscle health. But we also know it's really important for our immune system and for protecting and preventing disease. There are some studies to show that potentially there's some research that maybe we want to take more vitamin D when we're fighting against viruses such as coronavirus, certainly other respiratory disease, taking double that, 20 to 50 micrograms could support us, but we don't have the evidence yet. I am actually trawling through loads of research papers at the moment, and next week I will write something about this. So keep an eye on my website and my blog because I will write something more about this. But I do recommend you take a vitamin D supplement. If you're dark skin, I suggest you take a vitamin D supplement all year round because it's so important for our just not our overall health, but also particularly our immune health. Right now, where we're having a limited amount of times outside because we're allowed up to an hour outside, and maybe that might not be the peak time for us to make vitamin D, or maybe the sun's not out as much that day. I would suggest just taking a supplement. I use Better You, which is a spray, which is really easy for children to take and for people who don't like swallowing tablets. So another thing to do to support our immune system is to reduce sugar and alcohol. There's, I know we all know that drinking alcohol and eating a diet high in sugar isn't necessarily good for us. I also know that we're under a really stressful time, and that might be the kind of foods that we're reaching for. I have been baking so much food. It's been crazy, and I'm having to give it all away. Otherwise, I'm going to eat it all. So I totally understand where we might go with it. But what we know is that alcohol is toxic to some of our immune system cells, but particularly from the T cells, which recognize specific antigens and kind of this adaptive, this learnt kind of immune response. And if we have a diet high in sugar, it's again normally inactivates our original kind of first defense, that innate immune system, because it causes inflammation. So if we want our immune system to work well, we want to balance this. That doesn't mean don't drink alcohol and don't have cake I had chocolate cake today. Uh, but let's just make sure that we're kind of having the 80-20 rule, and then 80% of the time we're eating these rainbow foods, fiber rich foods, fermented foods and products, which I haven't talked about yet, and oily fish and things like that. Fermented foods and probiotics. I just want to touch on this. Fermented foods introduce beneficial bacteria into your gut microbiome. We don't know how much actually gets into your gut. It depends on the food, it depends on your system, and the same with probiotics. But it can help. They don't help by actually living in your gut, but what they do is they kind of provide a placeholder place, and they make the environment better for the beneficial bacteria that are naturally should live there to live there. So that's important. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about practical aspects for the last 5 minutes, and then we're going to go to questions. So please start adding in your questions, answers, and there's a little question and answer box. There's also a chat screen, so please do that. I'm not checking that yet, but we'll do in a minute. Sorry, I'm just going to share my screen again so you can see the next slide. So I wanted to give you a few practical tips for eating healthily during lockdown. So one is your store cupboard. This is my actual cupboard. It's slightly messy, but as you can see, there's lots and lots of different things in there. So firstly, I would look at long-lasting basics. What things would be useful to have in our store cupboards to make healthy dishes, even if we can't go out to shop because we're self-isolating, or we can't get to the shops regularly and we just need to have food available. So firstly, frozen and tinned fruits and vegetables are really nutritious. I have stocked up on loads of frozen vegetables and fruits. Lots and lots of supermarkets now do ready chopped and prepped vegetables, so it makes it really quick and easy to make sure you're having vegetables in your diet. And this isn't just the normal peas and sweet corn, but I have broccoli, I have onions, I have a Mediterranean vegetable mix. In fact, one supermarket, Waitrose, does roasted vegetables which are already frozen, and I love that. It's such a great cheat. It's amazing. But you can get so many things. Also, tin and fruits and vegetables, or ones in jars. I'm a real fan, and you can see that in the middle of the store cupboard of roasted red peppers in jars, because they're just so delicious and they're great to add to things. Whole grains such as rice, barley, spelt, freekeh, oats, couscous, all of these different grains were really high in fiber, super important for our immune system and our overall health. But also they're dry, they're easy to stock, they're cheap. You do have to spend a little bit of time cooking them. If you're having you might need to cook rice for up to half an hour, 40 minutes, depending on what type of rice it is. But some of those, there are quick cooked versions as well. I think oats are brilliant because you use them in so many ways. Tinned and dried beans and legumes such as chickpeas. Again, I have a mixture of both tinned and dried. With dry beans and legumes, you do need to often soak them overnight and then cook them the next day. But I also have tinned ones and ones in pouches, as you can see, the Merchant Gourmet ones. And that makes it really easy to put together a kind of lovely warm sort of salad or stew or something like, or even a curry or something like that. Seeds and nuts. Always great for snacking, but great to add texture and flavor through, obviously not if you're allergic. Olive oil, other oils and vinegars. So our food is all about flavor and texture. So olive oil and other oils and vinegars can help make really fantastic dressings, which can make vegetables taste really good. Same with herbs and spices, fresh and dry. Herbs and spices are packed full of potent bioactive molecules, which are really important for our health. And actually, they all adds up. I love using dried herbs and spices, but I also like to have fresh ones. And as the weather's better, I've just bought myself a new basil plant. I normally have a coriander plant. And I'm going to talk to you about storage in a second. And then also pouches, as I said, of ready cooked lentils and grains. So how do we make the most of our fresh produce? So one thing I will say is buy seasonal produce. This is often more nutrient dense and cheaper. If you're buying asparagus in December, it's going to be expensive. It's out of season. Same with strawberries. Whereas if you wait till the season, so it's now April, we're coming into Jersey new potato season, and they'll be much cheaper than if you bought them at any time of year. Also, we know from experiments that anything that's seasonal and harvested at the right time actually is higher in nutrients. Consider seasonal vegetable boxes that you might know how to choose what you get, but it's a really efficient way of eating, you know that you're going to get this freshest produce. A lot of the time it's come directly from the farm, where there's so many amazing schemes at the moment. And every restaurant wholesaler is now trying to produce boxes for us to have at home, which is really exciting. Then think about how we store highly perishable produce. So with my herbs, if I have bunches of parsley and coriander and things, I pop them in a glass of water. Sometimes I wrap them, I let them dry out a little bit, and then wrap them in tissue paper or kitchen roll and put them in an airtight container in the fridge. How do we stop vegetables going off? If we get a whole box of being in a week, what can we do? We can roast and prep and blanch and freeze vegetables so that we're making the most of them and we're not wasting by things going off because we haven't cooked them. I'm a real fan of batch cooking and freezing. So I make curries, bolognese, chili, all sorts of things like that, and I freeze them. It's particularly useful as a person living on my own because some of these things like bolognese, you can't make one portion, you need to make five, same with chili. And so it means I get to have different things every day, but it also makes the most of not wasting the produce when I've got it and it's fresh and I can then just freeze it. Again, with your vegetables that are left over, look at soups, risottos, sauces, curries, slow cooked dishes. I'm doing lots of Instagram cook alongs at the moment, and I'm just trying to be really clear about making up recipes that you can use any vegetables that you've got and not specific to the recipe. The whole point is let's try and adapt and try and use our vegetables that we have, make the most of them. Most of the time, you know what's going to work. The other last thing I wanted to mention is I know a lot of people find it expensive to buy, like, buying a chicken breast is really expensive and probably unheard of at the moment. So buying a whole chicken if you're a family and eating the meat over a couple of days, and then you've got the bones to make broth is amazing. Or someone was looking for beef mince and there wasn't any other day, but there was like brisket. So again, that will slowly cook down and melt into a lovely dish if you cook it slowly. So just think a little bit more about how you actually kind of prepare your food, cook it, freeze it, store it, and things like that. And I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to whiz back now to the main screen and look at your questions. Some of you are just saying that you can't see the slides, but now you can see the slides. So thank you. So yeah, this is a really good moment. I don't know if you've got any questions. If there are any open questions, then let me know. There's a little question answer slide at the bottom, and you can answer questions there. So Chloe, thank you very much. When is my next IG live cook along going to be? I haven't actually decided when that'll be. I think I will try and do one on Saturday. And I will let you know if I can do that. If not, I'll be after the Easter break because I do also want some days off. And I'll let you know. And keep an eye on my Instagram for the Instagram cook alongs. From Helen. What's my opinion on sunflower spread regarding its omega-6 via omega-3 content? Personally, I think that, so we know that sunflower oil has much more omega-6 versus omega-3. Omega-3 is the fatty acid which we really need. Personally, I avoid that because our westernized diet is already very high in omega-6s. Traditionally, we had a ratio of 1 to 1. Now our modern diets have a ratio of 20 to 1 with 20 times more omega-6. So I'd rather people use actual butter and just enjoy the taste rather than sunflower spread. I just think that this came up in the 80s when we were trying to limit saturated fat, and we didn't really understand how fat affected our body. And we now know that higher levels of carbohydrates and sugar affect our body in a different way. So again, I would just really look at why you're having that. I mean, whether it's just because you've had it always traditionally, but from a health perspective, I would probably personally avoid it. So I'm just moving my leg. So I hope that answers your question, Helen. Oats. So what can I do about oats rather than just using porridge? So I am a big fan of Swiss Bircher muesli. There is a recipe on my blog. So this is overnight oats. So you can soak those oats in orange juice or something like kefir or something like that overnight. And then I grate in apple or a pear. I add in some yogurt. And then I add some fresh fruit. And that's really great. I also, with oats, I've also tried, remember Scottish people have traditional always eaten porridge with salt. So I've been experimenting with some savoury porridges with adding loads of herbs and cheese and all sorts of things like that. And that's actually quite delicious. It's great in a bake too. So you can use oats in lots of cookies and all sorts of things. I'm a big fan of those big flaky oats for baking. So I think they're really delicious. Hope that answers your question, Ajay. And going back to Helen, what about spreads for vegans? I think olive oil spread is probably one of the better ones. I think there's so many good vegan options now with for butter and spreads and things like that. I think it also depends on what you're using it for. So if you're having a beautiful ciabatta or Italian bread, why not just go for olive oil rather than olive oil spread? Obviously, if you're cooking and baking particularly, yeah, absolutely. I think that using olive oil spread would be great. So I think it's about just varying it and not having too much of the same thing. Um, does that answer your question, Helen? I hope that does. So we've got another few minutes if anyone's got any other questions. We've got a little bit of time. I've got plenty I could talk about, but I do want to answer your questions. I'd love to hear what you've all been cooking in lockdown and whether people have been trying new recipes or whether they've been cooking new things. So, soluble and insoluble fibers. Can I give you a few examples from which foods to get these? Thanks, Chloe. That's a really great question. And Ajay, I've just seen your question about having a smoothie a day. So, I'll talk about that in a second. So, firstly, the soluble, insoluble fiber. So, soluble fiber would be something like an apple, which is something called pectin, which is a soluble fiber, and that kind of it dissolves. And something like an insoluble fiber is something that we can't break down. So, some of these beans or maybe some vegetables like greens and things like broccoli and stuff have got some portion of insoluble fibers that we can't break down, but our beneficial bacteria can. So all foods and fruits and vegetables will have a mixture normally of soluble and insoluble fibers. That also affects how we digest it. So going now to Ajay's question and answering the same soluble, insoluble fiber, if we ate a whole apple, this would be digested in your stomach. So when you eat it, the soluble and insoluble fiber combines to make something that can go into your digestive tract, and this fiber makes a gel. And then when it goes into your system, your beneficial bacteria can digest it. When we make a smoothie, particularly with something like a NutriBullet, which shears everything, it shears the insoluble fiber. What happens is that most of the fiber becomes soluble then, and then it doesn't create this gel, which means it can't get to the gut where your beneficial bacteria need it. So whilst you do get some benefit from the kind of vitamins and minerals, and you absorb those from your stomach and other parts of your gut, but you don't get the same thing where you get the fiber down to your gut for the beneficial bacteria to eat. So going back to Ajay's point, if I could have one smoothie a day, I wouldn't be having a smoothie. I actually would just not have a smoothie. I would eat the fruit and vegetables, the same ones I was going to put into my smoothie. You'll feel much more fuller because the fiber will help you to make more full, because it, as I explained, it creates this sort of gel which gets down to your bacteria, and also it's way better for your bacteria, your beneficial bacteria, which will support your overall health and also your immune system. So I'm just going to go down because there's a lot more questions suddenly. Helen again, does the research suggest taking probiotic supplements or just eating a rainbow diet? That's a really great question. Really mixed research. The first thing is to eat a rainbow diet, because that is your antioxidants and also your vitamins and minerals and things. But the probiotic is different. That's what we would get from our fermented foods, our yogurts, our sauerkraut, our kimchi, our kefir, all of those things. And that can help support an immune system. The research does show it can support, doesn't show how much or what we need to eat. It's about really us trying things out for ourselves. We do know that eating fermented foods, whatever it might be, including even sourdough, is good for our beneficial bacteria in our gut. So they're two different things. Taking a probiotic and eating a rainbow diet are two very, very different things. They're not equating the same thing, but taking a probiotic supplement is more equated to having a fermented food or a yogurt, or all those things. Again, it really depends on how your gut bacteria are doing. It's not something you should be taking all the time. If you've had antibiotics, you should absolutely take probiotic supplements. Because that will help to repopulate. Because obviously when you have antibiotic, it kills all the good bacteria in your system and the bad bacteria too. And if you've had surgery, if you've had stomach issues, if you're not well, then I would suggest, but do talk to your GP, a dietitian, a nutritionist, and get support. Don't just start taking it. Most people, do they need it? I don't know. It really depends on the state of their health at the moment. From Nana, can you highlight on using dried fruits and nuts? So dried fruits are fantastic because they're dried and they don't go off, but they are really, really high in sugar. So I wouldn't recommend swapping dried fruits instead of having fresh fruit during this time. I'd rather you had a frozen fruit or from tinned fruit because that's much higher in nutrients. It's also much higher in fiber. And some of these vitamins that we need are water soluble. So by drying them out, we remove the water, and so then we lose some of those vitamins and minerals. Nuts are great, but again, we have to be careful because they're really high in monounsaturated fats, but high in calories. So we need to be careful that we don't always eat them. Nita, I think you put your hand up. I saw there's a hand up function, which is very exciting, but I'm not sure what your question is. So I hope that's answered, Nana, but that we've just, there is a place for dried fruits and nuts, particularly when you're out and about and you're snacking. Also, quite good if you're having issues with constipation, but we do want to have fresh or frozen or the tin one with the water because some of the water soluble vitamins are here. I can't actually see where some of these, let me see where this is. Q&A, right, Q&A. Right, I'm just, here we go. There's a lot more questions here, which I've suddenly realized. What are my thoughts on bone broths and their nutritional value? So bone broth is, traditionally in cooking in restaurants, it was stock. Yes, there's definitely elements of collagen and other things which can help support our gut health. We don't know enough about it. We know that from traditional cooking that we've used them for thousands of years, but we've boiled up the bones to make gut. I think partly it's because it has molecules in it which can help close some of the junctions in our gut so they're not leaky. So that's one. Hopefully that's answer your question. Jenny, wow. Okay, going back to leaky gut, which I've just talked about. So do you need a probiotic when you have a leaky gut? I think we also want to look at not just probiotics, but also healing your gut lining itself. So this is where we need to look at what other types of food you're eating, but also stress relief is super important. Your sleep, and also looking at are there things that you might be intolerant to, your genetics. So I do quite a lot of work with nutrigenomics, which looks at your genes. We can test for lots of mutations now and see how your diet and your environment interact. So we need to work out why you have a leaky gut. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need probiotics. It means that you need something to help ensure that your gut is not quite so leaky and that some of those gaps are not there. So hopefully that answers that question, Jenny. Jenny, what probiotics? I really like Simprove, which is a water-based probiotic, but there's so many other ones which are really good. I think we need to look at something that we know that there's studies to show that it actually gets into your intestines and into your gut rather than just not going through your system. And also the webinar about how eating to avoid breast cancer reoccurrence. At some point I will do that. It's not kind of at the most important thing right now while we're dealing with this crisis, but it's something that I will be doing more of. I'm writing a book about that, so hopefully I can answer your questions another time. But I'm also conscious that we are nearing the end of time. So if everyone's got one last question, then I will be able to answer that. And otherwise I will say goodbye and thank you so much for being a fantastic audience and for joining on a Wednesday evening when it is quite lovely outside, but I know we're supposed to stay at home. Be healthy, be safe, try and eat as many fruit and vegetables as you can, eat some whole grains, eat olive oil, all sorts of things. Oh, I've got one more question. How about taking a multivitamin? A multivitamin will help kind of plug up some of the gaps, but there's nothing, we get so much more from our diet than a multivitamin can provide. We don't get the fiber from a multivitamin. So if you feel like you're particularly lacking in something, then we need to look at that. So vitamin D is something I suggested lots of people take for not just our immune systems, but for our overall health, because we know that having low vitamin D levels is linked to heart disease, cancer, diabetes. But I don't think you can get all of that from a multivitamin. You don't get the fiber, you don't get all the other things, the other micronutrients. So I would say take it if you feel like you're really lacking in food, but not necessarily the thing. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up there. It was really great to kind of be part of this Health Flicks. They've got all of this will be recorded and will be on YouTube. So you'll be able to share this with your friends or family or rewatch it if you want to pick up some information. I'll be sharing more about it on my Facebook and my social media. But there's some really fantastic talks on Health Flicks, and I'm looking forward to watching them now that my talk's over. So, wish you a great evening. Take care, be happy, be healthy, and stay sane. And that might involve eating cake. Bye.